So I know what you're thinking. You're probably wondering, like, you've really built a case for this specific ore. Are you like super invested in it? What is this? Is this like Starbase's first rug pull? Is this like a crypto scam? No, it's not. It's just literally where all the math adds up to right now. So hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Bob Kebab, and today we're going to be talking about mining runs. Specifically, what ore should you be targeting when you do go out and explore and try to get some money from mining. As a reminder, if you find any of this information helpful and you want to see more content like this, please consider dropping a like below and even subscribing for more Starbase content. So today's video, we're going to focus on specifically figuring out what the best ore to hunt down is. I've kind of got a theory on this, and I apologize, but I'll be making the case for it. And I assure you this is not like a crypto scam or any sort of Starbase mining ore rug pull or anything like that. This is just something that I've been seeing, and I don't get why more people aren't doing this. The first clarification I'll make on this video right before we get into anything else is that these prices obviously fluctuate, and they can be very different by the time that this video is viewed by you, so just keep that in mind. As of the recording, this is what the prices are. They were different like 2 hours ago. They'll probably be different in 2 more hours. But as of recording, these are the prices I'm working with. Another important note for this video is that all of the ores that I'm going to be talking about are going to be ones that can be found within the EOS asteroid belt. If you're watching this video and trying to figure out how to best prioritize your mining, you're probably a newer player or someone that hasn't gotten something like a jump drive yet, so you're not warping over to the moons, and we're just going to be talking about stuff that can be found in the immediate asteroid belt around the origin stations. So with that only gives us so many different options. So here's a map or chart of the asteroid belt, and it shows all the different ores and where they're at in each section of the belt. So this image is like an inlay. It's like if you were to do a cross cut of the asteroid belt, this is what would look like if you were to like just look through it like a tree ring or something like that. At this point, you know there's a bunch of different ores, and they're encased in different sorts of shell rocks. So as you go deeper into the zones, there are some more valuable, more rare materials. We're going to be looking through each zone of the asteroid belt, evaluating how much you can get for the top ore that's in that section, that zone, and then comparing across all 4 of these zones which one generates the most credits per minute. So obviously you're going to want to get the most valuable ore. However, it doesn't make sense to go after that most valuable ore if it takes like 3 hours to get there and back. The best way to calculate, which ore has the best efficiency in terms of how many credits per minute are you gaining by hunting down this specific thing, we're going to look at a few traits. Obviously, we're going to look at the price of each of the ore in the zones, and we're going to be using the top price among all 4 of those zones. Secondly, we're going to calculate the distance to each of those zones. I'm not going through and doing like 100 trials of each zone or anything like that. For the purposes of this video, we're just going to be sticking with this chart using the exact numbers that are thrown on here. However, if you've been mining recently, you've noticed that there's a lot more missing asteroids than previously, and that's happening mostly around the origin stations. A fun little feature about Starbase is that all of the asteroids in the galaxy are finite. There's a ton of them, so you don't really have to worry about running out of rocks anytime soon. But as of right now, we're starting to see what happens when you have tens of thousands of players spending hours for weeks on end chipping away at all the rocks nearest to the origin station and selling them off. That's resulted in a ton of asteroids kind of going away. I've heard people say they can't find anything until 35 kilometers out. I just found something at 22. We're just going to, I just did a check to see how close it was to my origin station, and we're going to be using that number. Obviously it varies depending on if you have a high pop station or a low pop one. It's probably going to be a little bit more reflective of that. But once you get beyond 50 kilometers, once you get beyond the initial rush of the safe zone, I think we can all kind of assume that there's not going to be as much mining. You see way less people when you go that far out. We'll be pulling up the prices, but while we're heading back to the auction house to see that, we can actually do some stuff. The main thing here is that we can figure out what the round trip distances are on each of these items. So for Cherodium, this is the most valuable ore that's in the first zone. Once you move to zone 2, the leader in that area is usually it's always a GCM. It's nearly 2 times as valuable as the next nearest item, so we're going to be selecting that. And then for zone 3, we've seen all the other ores in that category except for Arcanium, and Arcanium is actually worth quite a bit. It fluctuates anywhere from like 17 to 20,000 credits per stack, so we'll be figuring out a more proper number there. And then for zone 4, Kutonium is the most expensive one there, not by much, but is the most expensive, and it's also rare. With that, we want to calculate the round trip distance, because for the most part, once you find rocks in the zone, you're probably going to be spending about the same amount of time in each area looking. There is a caveat to that, and I'll explain it in a second. The main difference between all 4 of these zones is just the sheer distance difference. Like I mentioned before, we found the first rocks in zone 1 at 22 kilometers from the station, so times that by 2 and we'll get 44 kilometers, or 44,000 meters. And then at a GCM, we can go ahead and assume the best case scenario for them, in which you find it right at 50. You'll start to see those rocks. So a round trip total would be 100,000 meters. Moving on to Arcanium, same sort of deal. I found them a little bit before 350 once before, and I've seen them further. Depends on how good your trajectory is as you dive into the belt. But we'll go ahead and just do the nice number they give us. 350 times 2 is 700. And then finally, 650 kilometers times 2 is going to be 1.3 million. So before we put the ore prices in, there's a clear difference among all of these, and you can kind of see that from this chart, but this really illustrates it. If you have a ship that goes 100 meters a second, it'll take you about 7 minutes to get to the first sort of rocks outside of the station. As you go further, those numbers just shoot up like crazy, so you'll be more than doubling your time to get to a GCM and back. And then for Arcanium, you're looking at like nearly a 2-hour trip back and forth, just to get this stuff outside of the safe zone, that is, too. So you're really risking it, and that's 3 hours, or however long or however fast your ship is. You're going to have to travel that entire distance while also keeping an eye out for any sort of asteroid. All right, so we're going to go ahead and fill in the numbers as we see them here. So for Cherodium, right now the current price is 4,400. For GCM, 8,800. That's approximately where they've been all day. Arcanium is currently at 18,433, and then Kutonium is up at 26,500. So if you had 30 cargo crates and your ship was going 100 meters a second, increasing that number doesn't really change much. Like if I were to double it, and also this is a very crude calculation. The ship speed obviously changes when you have a full load, or if you've bolted on additional ore onto your ship. So this could take way longer than the numbers here. This is just running back and forth with an empty cargo. So full load prices, this is what you would get if you just sold it all pre-tax to the auction house. So when you divide out the full load price by the amount of flight time back and forth from those zones, you get 18,000 credits a minute of flying, whereas if you were to go to zone 2 and mine a GCM, it would be 15,840 credits per minute of flying back and forth. As you go further into zone 3, this gets so much worse. So I didn't anticipate it to be that bad, but when you get out to zone 3, you're making like a third of what you would be even in zone 2, and it only gets worse when you get out to zone 4. So another big reason why Cherodium is as good of an idea as you can do is because I mentioned previously, there's different rock types in each of the zones. Zone 1 is exceptionally unique in that it's got 3 different shell types. So you've got your valkite, your agitite, and ice, and that encases all of the ores. As you go further out, there's less and less of these shells, and they're more just one everywhere else. So in zone 2, you've got valkite and agitite. Zone 3, you've got just ice. Zone 4, just agitite. Now, what does this mean for everything? 1, if you look at this chart, you can see that terodium is the only ore in this list that's in agitite. That's a huge advantage, because if you go through and you're scanning and looking for rocks, if you've got a really good computer or you can see things pretty well on your monitor, you're generally able to tell the difference between if the rock you're looking at is made of ice or valkite, and agitite's a little bit tough to differentiate between ice and agitite. So you're able to just scan and tell by looking at it at a really long distance away, what type of rock this is. And for zone 1, this is a huge clue, because if you can see and determine that it's that gray agitite rock out there, that means it's 100% chance that there's terodium in it. As you go further out into the zones, you lose that guarantee. So in zone 2, you've got 2 different material types on the outside. But for agesium, you're competing with bastium that's also in valkite. So when you go out there and you're in zone 2 looking around, trying to avoid rocks as well and crashing and burning your ship, you're also looking to see if you can figure out what the ore is before you get too close, so to save some time. So you might get lucky and you might see a little bit of that silver peeking out for agesium, or you might just not be able to see any ore at all and have to drive right up and find out it's bastium. That's super frustrating and it wastes a lot of time. And finally, when you get to zone 3 and 4, everything's in ice or everything's in agitite. So that means every rock you're going up to, you have to either see the ore sticking out, or you have to go and check every single rock, which is a huge difference in time. And that's tough to quantify, so I can't really add that in here, but clearly there's an advantage in being in zone 1. So when you put all of this together, for a newer player or for someone who's just trying to grind out and get as much money as they can while there are still a ton of rocks near them. So I know what you're thinking. You're probably wondering, like, you've really built a case for this specific ore. Are you like super invested in it? What is this? Is this like Starbase's first rug pull? Is this like a crypto scam? No, it's not. It's just literally where all the math adds up to right now. So if you're in the areas around the origin station, definitely be going out there and getting terodium. And yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about that right now. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching through the whole thing. If you enjoyed it, if you found it helpful, please drop a like below. If you want to leave some thoughts, feel free to throw them in the comments. I've heard that my mic was bad in the previous video, so I'm working on it. And then finally, if you want to see more content like this, more updates, please consider subscribing. It helps out a bunch, and I'm pretty much just pumping out Starbase content at this point, so I'll try not to spam y'all. So thanks again, and I hope to see you next time.